ground shakes. Not like an earthquake, but like something alive, something huge. You are in the middle of a floodplain, in the heart of what was once wild South America millions of years ago. The air is thick, hot, heavy with the smell of mud and blood. There is an eerie silence among the trees, the kind of silence that only exists when all the other animals have fled. And then you see a shadow, wide as a house, moving slowly, with the absolute confidence of someone who has no predators. From those who never had it, welcome to prehistoric South America, the continent that created some of the most terrifying monsters this planet has ever produced. And today, we will meet them one by one. This is not a video about dusty fossils in museums. This is a dive straight into the darkness of a past where survival was the exception and violent death was the rule. 10 creatures, 10 nightmares with flesh, teeth, and claws, built by evolution to kill, dominate, and terrorize. Get ready. We begin with a creature that for a long time was poorly understood by science, underappreciated until fossils began to tell a different story. The Eremitherium, a giant sloth. Before you laugh, listen up. We're talking about an animal that measured up to 6 meters long and weighed more than 3 tons. To give you an idea, this is bigger than most African elephants that exist today. Eremitherium walked upright when necessary, supporting itself on its hind legs and tail like a living tripod, reaching foliage more than 5 meters high. But what made this creature truly terrifying wasn't its size. They were the claws, curved, dense, up to 50 centimeters long, made primarily for digging and uprooting vegetation, but capable of tearing any predator in half with a single sideways blow. There is fossil evidence to suggest that predators such as prehistoric big cats avoided adult Eremitherium. There was no advantage in attacking something that could turn you to pulp with a reflex movement. Eremitherium was not a predator. It was something worse for the hunters. It was a walking fortress that needed no one to survive, and that destroyed anything that dared threaten it. But if the Eremitherium was a fortress, the next creature was a spear. Fast, precise, and absolutely relentless. Terrorbirds, the family Forus racidae, dominated South America for nearly 60 million years. 60 million years. To compare, our species has less than 300,000. These birds didn't fly. They didn't need to. They ran at up to 70 kilometers per hour in a straight line, chasing prey across open plains with an efficiency that would make any cheetah reconsider his career. The largest of these, the Kalenkan, had a skull 3 feet long, larger than any known bird in Earth's history. The beak was a living axe, curved, dense, designed to strike prey with enough force to break bones on the first strike. The hunting method was brutal in its simplicity. Chase, knock down with a kick from the paws, which had claws as sharp as knives, and then use the beak like a hammer repeated over the victim's skull. There was no drama. There was no prolonged struggle. There was only the speed and concentrated violence of a predator that had spent tens of millions of years being perfected by natural selection. If you found a terror bird in the open, there was no negotiation. There was only the question of how many seconds you had. Leaving the plains and entering the dark waters of the rivers and lakes of ancient South America, we found something that redefined the concept of an aquatic predator, the Purosaurus, a crocodilian with proportions that defy the imagination. At up to 12 and perhaps 15 meters long and weighing estimates reaching 8 tons, Purosaurus is the largest crocodilian to ever exist on this planet. We are not talking about an animal similar to the alligator that you can see today in the rivers of the Pantanal. We're talking about a destruction machine that would have devoured the modern alligator like a snack. The bite of Purosaurus was calculated by scientists to be the most powerful ever recorded on any terrestrial or semi-terrestrial animal in history. The estimated bite force exceeds 80,000 newtons, more than enough to crush the femur of an adult Eremitherium like a dry twig. Purosaurus didn't need speed. He waited, motionless in the muddy waters of the Amazon rivers 10 million years ago, with only their eyes above the surface, monitoring every animal that approached to drink. And when it attacked, it was with an explosion of violence so sudden and so overwhelming that the victim often failed to register what had happened before the bones began to give way. The rivers of prehistoric South America were not just waterways. They were the territory of a creature that had no rivals, who knew no fear, who reigned supreme over everything that swam, drank, or dared to enter its water. And speaking of absolute dominance, There is a creature that inhabited the swamps and rivers of Venezuela and Colombia, with a presence that made even young Purosaurus think twice. The Barinasuchus, another crocodilian, but with a fundamental difference that made it even more terrifying on dry land. It walked with its legs practically upright under its body, like a mammal instead of crawling like modern crocodiles. This means that Barinasuchus could run, really run, with a body that reached 40 feet and jaws full of conical teeth designed to pierce and grip, not to cut but to hold the victim, while the animal's colossal weight dragged it to the ground. Researchers believe that Barinasuchus was a large, opportunistic predator, capable of hunting in both aquatic and land environments, making it a ubiquitous threat. You weren't safe in the water because of the Purosaurus. You weren't safe on land because of Barinasuchus. The continent gave you no refuge. Before we continue our descent into the abyss of this list, I need to pause here for a moment, because if you're here, watching this video, immersed in this universe of creatures that dominated the Earth long before us, you're exactly the kind of person who makes Lumen Scientiae exist. Every like on this video, every subscription to the channel, is what allows our team to continue producing documentaries with this level of research, immersion, and cinematic quality. We're not making quick throwaway content. We're bringing extinct monsters back to life with scientific respect and visceral storytelling. If this means anything to you, hit the like button now. Subscribe to the Lumen Scientiae channel. Activate the bell, because the next video we're preparing is going to make this one look tame and you won't want to miss it. Back to the horror, because he didn't stop waiting for us. We now come to a name that should be as famous as Tyrannosaurus rex, but which unfairly remains in the shadows of popular knowledge. Giganotosaurus carolinii. Discovered in Argentine Patagonia in 1993, this theropod dinosaur rewrote what we knew about the size of bipedal predators. With estimates that place its length between 13 and 13.8 meters and its weight between 6 and 8 tons, Giganotosaurus directly rivals Tyrannosaurus rex in size, and in some aspects surpasses it. The skull was longer than that of the T-Rex, measuring almost 2 meters. The teeth were serrated, designed to cut meat rather than crush bone, suggesting a different hunting style, closer to a butcher than a shredder. Paleontologists believe that Giganotosaurus may have hunted in groups, coordinating attacks against titanosaurs, herbivorous dinosaurs that weighed 30, 40, 50 tons. Imagine the scene: a herd of Giganotosaurus, each weighing the equivalent of an African elephant, coordinating an attack on a creature the size of a 4-story building, the ground shaking with each step, the roar echoing for miles. South America was not just the birthplace of giants. It was the battlefield where the greatest giants in history destroyed each other. And speaking of high-level destruction, there is a creature from the Brazilian Cretaceous that few know about, but that deserves the same reverent terror that we dedicate to the great predators of the north, Oxalia quilombensis. Discovered in Maranhão, this spinosaurid, from the same family as the famous African Spinosaurus, was one of the largest predators in prehistoric Brazil, with estimates reaching 14 meters in length. Oxalia was a semi-aquatic predator, specializing in giant fish that inhabited the rivers of the Brazilian Cretaceous, fish that today we would consider monsters in their own right. With an elongated snout filled with inward curving teeth, designed to capture slippery prey without letting it escape, and possibly a Spinosaurus-like dorsal sail, Oxalia was a creature of epic proportions that straddled the line between the aquatic and terrestrial worlds. The simple existence of this animal reminds us that Brazil was once home to some of the largest predators this planet has known. Beneath the soil of our own country lie the bones of monsters that would make the modern lion look like a cub. Now, a question for you who are here, immersed in this universe, and I want your answer in the comments right now. You've seen so far the Giganotosaurus, the birds of terror, the Purosaurus, the Barinasuchus, and the Oxalia. If you place 2 of these predators in the same territory, forcing a battle for dominance, which 2 would you choose? And who would win? Comment below. I read all the comments, and the more elaborate answers I will respond to personally. This conversation between us is what turns this channel into something alive, continuing our journey, because there are still horrors we haven't presented. Megaptera, the giant of the sky. No, we are talking about the South American pterosaur that inhabited the skies of Brazil during the Cretaceous. With a wingspan that may have reached 9 meters, creatures like Anhanguera and its relatives were the absolute masters of the air. Below them, everything was potential food. Imagine looking up at the sky and seeing a shadow approaching, silent, with its absurd wingspan blocking the sun, and then its teeth, long and curved, closing in on you before you had time to scream. South American pterosaurs represent an extraordinary evolutionary lineage that demonstrates how this continent was, on all planes, land, water, and air, dominated by predators of colossal scale, from the heights to the depths. Megapiranha paranensis. Have you ever been scared by a modern piranha? A foot-long fish with teeth that cut through flesh with surgical precision, now triple the size. The megapiranha was a fish up to 70 centimeters long, twice as long as the largest piranhas today, with pyramid-shaped teeth that scientists calculated were capable of exerting a bite force disproportionate to the animal's size. Proportionally, the megapiranha had one of the most powerful bites of any fish ever recorded. In the rivers of South America 8 to 10 million years ago, a school of megapiranha was not just a hazard. It was a certain and extremely quick end for any animal that had the misfortune to fall into these waters. Before we get to our number one predator, and I promise that when you hear about him, you'll understand why we saved it for last, I need a moment of honesty with you. Producing a documentary like this is neither cheap nor easy. Each Lumen Scientiae episode involves weeks of research into scientific articles, consultation with paleontologists, narrative construction, recording, editing, and high-quality audio production. It's teamwork, it's passion, it's a real investment of time and resources. If this channel has already taught you something, if it has held you for a few minutes in this incredible universe that is South American paleontology, consider becoming a member of the channel, or use the thank you too much button to contribute any amount, 5 reais, 10 reais, whatever you can. It's not about enrichment, it's about sustainability. It's about making sure the next video is even better than this one. Each contribution is directly the fuel that keeps this machine running, and we take this very seriously. Now, number 1, the creature that, in our estimation, represents the absolute peak of South American prehistoric horror, not because of the size alone, not for speed alone, but for the devastating combination of all the qualities that make a predator truly unbeatable in its ecosystem. Thylacosmilus atrox. Often called the South American saber-tooth, Thylacosmilus was not a feline. It was a sparsadon, a carnivorous marsupial that evolved completely separately from the big cats of the north, in isolation on the South American continent, and independently arrived at the same lethal solution: huge, curved upper canines that grew continuously throughout the animal's life, protected by bony flanges in the lower jaw. But what made Thylacosmilus more terrifying than any Smilodon or Machaerodus wasn't just its teeth, it was the head. Thylacosmilus's skull was dominated by canines to such an extreme degree that the eyes were pushed upward and to the sides, meaning this animal had a field of vision adapted for looking upward while sinking its teeth down into its victim's throat. Every inch of its anatomy was shaped for a single purpose: to hold large prey by the neck and waiting while the main blood vessels gave way under the pressure of the canines, waiting while the victim's struggle turned to convulsion and the seizure turned to silence. Thylacosmilus did not kill with frenzied brutality, he killed with surgical patience, and that, somehow, is much more terrifying. Prehistoric South America was not just a continent, it was an experiment, an isolated laboratory where evolution has worked without interference for tens of millions of years, producing solutions to the problem of survival that have never been seen anywhere else on Earth. Crocodiles that ran, birds that hunted like dinosaurs, saber-toothed marsupials, dinosaurs that rival the largest predators of the north, sloths the size of elephants. This continent created unique, extraordinary, and absolutely real monsters whose bones still sleep beneath our Earth waiting to be found. And with each new fossil that emerges from Brazilian, Argentine, Venezuelan, Colombian soil, the story gets a little clearer and a little scarier. We still don't know everything. There are still creatures that hunted and dominated this continent whose names we don't even know. There are still giants waiting to be discovered, and when they are, we'll be here to tell their story. If you've made it this far, you're not just a spectator. You are part of Lumen Scientiae. Share this video with someone who loves science, who loves dinosaurs, who thinks Earth's past is as epic as any science fiction, because it is. And leave a comment. Which of these 10 monsters would you like to see in a complete episode dedicated just to him? Your response will directly influence what we produce next. Until the next episode. If you hear the ground shake, don't look down. Look to the sides and run.